Dr. Haley Gemara, we are at the top of Daf Mem Beis Amud Aleph, and we were learning about the sugya of Ein Sofik Moitzi Midivadai, and the Gemara wanted to bring a raya from the case of the kohen that looked over the edge of a bar to assess if there was a nefel that was born to the shivcha of Meitziv Echad Berimoin, and the question is, does this kohen become tamei? So the Gemara suggested that this might be a raya that ain't Suffolk, that Suffolk might be the vadai, because we know for sure the nefel fell into the bar, was thrown into the bar, was in the bar, and it's not 100%. It's a suffix as to whether or not the chaya and bardalus got a ruhu or not. So the Gemara ended up deflecting that either by saying it's a suffix with suffix, because we don't even know if it was a proper vlad, or the Gemara could have said it's a vadai uvadai, because it's not a suffix that a cholda or a bardalus will be goyer the nefel, it's a vadai, which left us at the next kasha of Esvei, which is about 12 lines. We might have done this yesterday as well, but we'll do a quick chazara. Esvei, matzah tavnis yad, tavnis regel. Our Mishnah, you found a tavnis of a yad or a regel by itself. The Gemara at first thinks it's a broken one. Haray elu asurim, they are asur. Mipnei shechayotzu behen nevad. You sometimes find that a guy will service such an avodah zarah. For Gemara mai hashvarim ninu, are they not broken? Meaning they're bottled already. Zakta Gemara. Shmuel already told us that it's speaking about Indian al basisan. You have this foot or this arm. It wasn't just a broken piece. Where there you would say Avoda, not even Mavatlit. So which would be a riot to Rabbi Yochanan. Rather, it's speaking where it's mounted. It's mounted on some type of pedestal or base. That clearly shows you weren't Mavatl Avodah Zarah. Esvei. So again, we're going back to the shaila as to whether or not a avodah zarah broke by itself. The guy didn't break it; it broke by itself. Reish Lakish holds its bottle, and Rabbi Yochanan holds it still also. Esvei ovid kachavim mevatel avodas kachavim shaloi v'shal chaverei. A guy could be mevatel on avodah zarah. This was a getchka. Until now, from now on, I don't serve this anymore. This is a piece of stone. And therefore it becomes ois asher v'ana, becomes ois avodah zarah. But for Yisrael, einem avatel avodas kachavim shel avodas shel ovid kachavim. A Yisrael cannot be mevatel any avodah zarah. Now we know once it belongs to a Yisrael, we know it remains asher v'ana forever. He can't be mevatel it. Well, why can't a Yisrael be mevatel the ovid kachavim of a goy? So, for instance, if a Yisrael wants to buy an avodah zarah from a guy, let him be mevatlet, and then he could buy it, and then it will not be asher v'ano. But freit Gemara, amai tahavik avodas kachavim shenishbra shenishdaber me'eleh. If I go to a guy and the guy has an avodah zarah, and I tell the guy I want to buy this from you, but this is not an avodah zarah. This is a simple piece of stone. It's nothing. So clearly, the guy is not doing anything to be mevatlet. But it's as if it became bottled by itself, and nevertheless, it doesn't work. The Yisrael ain't mevatel. So shouldn't you have a riot to Rabbi Yochanan that nishtaber me'elah would not be mutter? Omer Abaye shepichsa. You know why? The in this case the Yisrael can't be mevatel. The avodas kachavim shleivik kachavim. So I really misspoke. The Gemara is saying even if a yid goes and breaks the getchke of a goy, he smashes a piece off of it, he can't be mevatel the avodah kachavim of a goy. So the question is, even if we don't look at the action of the yid, remove the action of the yid from the picture, but lemaisa you have a getchke that's broken, it's nishtaber me'elah. That's exactly the case where Reish Lakish says it's mutter, yet the Brisa says it's aser. You know why it's not bottled? Because he didn't smash off a piece. You know what this Bryce is discussing? If the Yid smashed off a piece and now it's smashed to smithereens, everybody would agree that, in fact, that the avodah zarah becomes mutter because it's nishtabra meila. Pichsa means he hit it, it's cracked, but it's no piece fell off of it. It's cracked, it's damaged. If it's cracked, and if a yid cracks or damages it, that will not be considered nishtabra at all. It's still intact. It just cracked it, and maybe some pieces are loosened, but it's still there. That's where the Brisa says that a yid cannot be mevatel avodah zarah of a goy. But for Gemara, why isn't that not called broken? But non the Brisa tells us that if a guy does the same thing to his own avodah zarah, it's not missing any pieces, but it's cracked, mushy. The halacha is that is called batla. So the fact that if the guy did it to his own, it would be mevatel avodah zarah, and the yid who does it to the guy avodah zarah would not be mevatel. So once again, you have proof that nishtabra mehila is also. Zok to Gemara, there's a very big difference. If the guy himself smashes it, there's no greater expression of a guy that I'm being mevatel. So that's where it's considered a bittul. Because Rashi says the loydami lavoidis kechavim shenishtabra mehila. It's still not comparable to a getchka that actually broke by itself. Because if it broke mamish, the hasam amar ihi nafshaloi matzla. Only there does the guy say, if the getchka couldn't protect himself from breaking, the getchka is surely not going to be much help to me. Aval hacha, if it's only a pichsa, and it was done by a yid, kasavar ovid gechavim loy kapta avoid gechavim aprisa. The guy will say that my getchkele is such an edel person, it doesn't want to get involved in fights. So it's not makpid if it's a little bit squashed. And therefore, it would still be considered an intact avodah zarah. But if the guy himself was doing it with his own hands, there's no greater expression of the fact that the guy no longer worships this animal, this getchke. But Rava says a different shot. Le'olam ki pichsa Yisrael nami le'batla. Nami batla. Memes, even if the yid did this to the getchke, he damaged it, it would be bottled. So why does the Brisa say beferish the Yisrael einu mevatel avodas kochavim shalovid kochavim? The teretz is it's a gzeira. El gzeira dilma magbala v'hadar miftala. V'hava avodas kochavim b'yad Yisrael. V'chol avodas kochavim b'yad Yisrael einu b'tei l'loylam. Imagine if we would allow a yid to buy a getchka from a goy by first smashing it a little bit, that could lead to a huge problem, because a yid might not know exactly what the process would be, and he might lift the getchka up before he smashes it, and thereby be koinit. And once he's koinit, he could never do anything to remove its status of an avodah zarah. It's too dangerous a transaction for Chazal to allow, and therefore they said that even though technically, if you smash the getchka a little bit before you buy it, it's mevatel it. Nevertheless, we're not going to allow you to do that, because if you by mistake lift it first, then you're stuck with an Israel. Zok to Gemara weiter. Eisvei. Akum shehevi avanim min markulis. So a markulis is a getchke that was like a pile of stones. Rashi's yish akum she'oivdin legal shalavanim. There are goyim who worship a pile of stones. The Karel Merkulis. If I'm not mistaken, if you drive up north here, you often see at the side of the road these little stone statues, and they're made up of a whole bunch of stones. They pile up 2-3 stones, one for each leg, and then they put a flat stone across it, and then they put another couple of stones, and they put another flat leg across it. They put some arms. All those I think stem from Merkulis. I think those little stone Indian statues that we see along the side of the road as you drive up to Muskoka, I believe that is Markulis. So if you have a getchka like that fell apart, and a goy took some stones from a Markulis and he used it for something practical for himself, the chifa v'hendrachim, he used it to pave roads, the tartiyos. I'm not sure what tartiyos are, but he used it to build something with personal the halacha is muteris. It would be muteris, because the guy was clearly mevatel avodah zara. But the Yisrael sheva avodah minar makulas the chipa ben drachim v'tatiras asurais. But I don't understand. If the makulas was already knocked out, it fell down. Why in the world should it be usher? Am I? And once again, the avodas kavim shenishtaber me'eleh, according to Rish Lakish, is mutter. Zakta Gemara, Hakanami Kiderava. We could say the same svara. We're afraid to let you use abandoned makula stones, because you might lift them up before you mevatel them, and then it'll be an Isser Hana. So once again, it's a Gzeira. It's a Gzeira. Zakta Gemara, Tosfos asks, and there's going to be a series of kashas now that we're all going to answer with the same answer of Kidarava. It's a Gzeira, he might be koinit, the Yid might be koinit this Isser before it's Mavutal. And the Tosfos asks, why is it the Gemara asked all these shilas when we already knew the Svar of Rava can easily be applied to answer? There was a wooden statue, and he needed some wood, so he shaved some wood right off the getchke, so he needed, because he needed for Hashem, he needed to use. So he's literally slicing a piece of the Avodah Zara off to use for his own needs. So the halach is, if a guy did that, he vishu puyeh mutarin. Because clearly, if he's taking from a getchke, a piece of wood to use for his own purposes, he definitely does not consider this as getchke anymore. But if he shaved off a piece of wood off the getchke because he wanted to form it, he wanted to help make it look nicer, then he asura, the getchke is going to still be asur, because his act of shaving a piece of wood off of it was not an expression of being mevatlet, but v'shipuyah mutarin. But the piece that he shaved off, for sure, is no longer avodah zara. But v'Yisrael sheshipa avodas kachavim. But if a goy shaved off some wood from a getchke, but if a yid shaved off a piece of wood from a getchke, bein tzarcha, no matter what, he v'shipuyah asurin. Side the getchke and side the wood that was shaven off are both mutter. Why? It must be because we paskin like Rabbi Yochanan. Because according to Rish Lakish, Shamai, to have a kavod kachavim shenishchaber mehilel, the yid shaved it off, belonged to a guy, was by the guy. So why isn't it bottle? Because the guy should say, "Look, it fell apart, so it's nothing anymore." Why? According to Rish Lakish, you should say that, and it should be mutter. It's the same thing. We're afraid you'll lift it up and be kohen it before you shave it off. Rabbi Yosy Omer, what if you have a metallic or a stone getchke that you can't burn? So how do you get rid of it so that no one should chash v'sholom be nichshol in an isur hana? So you grind it down and you throw the dust into the air, or you throw the dust into the yam, so nobody will encounter it and possibly have a no from it. Amalei told him, that's not going to help you, because if you throw it to Ruchel Yam, it's going to end up landing on someone's field, and it becomes like a fertilizer. It actually will act like a fertilizer. So Vaiter, a Yid is going to benefit from it. It says in the Pasuk, don't even have the slightest, tiniest hanoah from the Isser of Avodah Zara, and using it as a zevel, using it as a fertilizer for your property, for your growing crops, that is very much a yidbak b'yotcha. Correct the Gemara, Amai, why would you say, according to Rish Lakish, why would you say this is a problem? If it was ground by a yid down to dust, that should be no worse than the Shtaber Me'aleh, and according to Rish Lakish, there is no longer an Isser of Avodah Zara there. Once again, it's the same Zera of Rava. If you grind it up while it still belongs to the Goy, sure it'll work. But if you grind it up after you kind it remains Isser Anah forever, and that's why the Braisa asked the Kasha Rabbi Yosy, the Mishnah asked the Kasha Rabbi Yosy, the Mishnah we're about to encounter. That's why the Mishnah has to catch on Rabbi Yosy that it doesn't help to grind it up because it remains Yisrael. Eisvei Rabbi Yosy ben Yosiyah. Rabbi Yosy ben Yosiyah Omer Mota Tzuras Darkoin. What happens if you found the tzur of a darkoin? I think a darkoin is a serpent, right? If you found you found dragon, okay, you found the form of a dragon, but the head of the dragon is cut off. I don't know. We don't know who cut the head of the dragon off. Was it the goy who cut it off? Sofik Yisrael chatchay, or did the Yid cut it off? The loch is mutter. But Vadai Yisrael Chatchay, if you know for sure that the goy cut off, that the Yid cut off the head of the dragon, Osir, then it will be Osir. Break the Gemara, why? If the Yid cut off the head of a dragon that belonged to a goy, it should be mutter like Rish Lakish holds. And according to Rish Lakish, that is mutter. We're still concerned because of what Rava said. Maybe the Yid will take the dragon first, he'll buy the dragon, he'll lift up the dragon first, he'll be koinit, and it will be usher, and no matter what's done to it, it cannot become mutter. Eitzvei, Rabbi Yosy Yomer, Af lo yirakosh b'moisak shamim, mepnei shanaviyah noisheres haleh. The halacha is, the Tanakama says, you're not allowed to plant vegetables under an Asherah tree, and the vegetables will benefit from the shade because you're having enough of an Isra no, the Asherah. It's an Isra no. But in the winter, where we actually are looking for sunlight to shine down on vegetables, so if anything, the Asherah is hurting your plants that you're growing underneath it, there you would be allowed to grow vegetables under the Asherah. But Rabbi Yosy says, even in the winter, you shouldn't plant vegetables under an Asherah because your vegetables are going to benefit from the Asherah because leaves that fall off the Asherah will disintegrate and act as a fertilizer, as nourishment for the vegetables that you're growing. But Frank Gemara, I don't understand. If those leaves are falling off the getchke, is that not literally nishtaber me'elel? Therefore, those leaves for sure are bottled according to Rish Lakish. So why would there be a problem with Yerakos b'moshak shamim being planted under an Asherah tree? Dr. Gemara, because in the summer it's the shade of the tree, so it's not the leaves falling off. So the tree is perfectly intact. Right? The whole point is the tree. So Dr. Gemara, shiny hasam. The ikar avodas kechavim kayemes. There it's much different. Yes, the leaf fell off, but there's no damage to the tree. The tree is in perfect, fine condition. So there, maybe that's not that type of damage, so to speak. We say that it makes the guy automatically reject the tree, and therefore it's still awesome. The ikar avodas kechavim kayemes. What about the case earlier where you shaved the piece off the Avodah Zara? So the main Avodah Zara is still there. You took a little piece off of it. It's no different than a little piece coming off of it, such as a leaf. Vikatani l'tarcha hiasura v'shipuya mutarin. Yet we see that if you did it l'tarcha, the getchke remains aser, and its shipuy is mutarin. So Ibazoi, the leaf should be mutter as well. Why would there be a problem with the leaves in the winter fertilizing it? You see, it becomes ois avodah zara. Dr. Gemara, if you're shaving a piece off a getchka, you're chopping a piece out of it. That piece, of course, would be mutter. But if a tree normally sheds leaves, it doesn't show that there's any degradation of the Asherah. So there's nothing there that's an expression of making a rice of avodah zara. It's normal for a tree to shed leaves. Therefore, we don't consider it that it's ois avodah zara. As Rashi says, derech kedilasa, zeh darka kol hashana lahasher alan shalah ulegat lacherim. It's normal for a tree to shed leaves and to grow others. But if the goy grinds down or or shaves down the Avodah Zara, on whatever he's planning to take off, he's surely planning to be Mivat. Esrei Freik the Gemara, another kash. So here, Esrei Reb Shimon ben Lakish Reb Yochanan. Up until now, we were asking a whole bunch of kashas on Ish Lakish. Why is it usher? Why is it usher? Now the tables are turning, and Reb Shimon ben Lakish is going to ask a kash Reb Yochanan to bring a raya that a Avodah that broke is going to be mutter, and that'll be Shver Reb Yochanan, because of the following case. Kan sheberai sha'ilan shel hektish. You had a tree that belonged to hektish, and there is a nest sitting on top of that tree. That the assumption is that the nest was built out of twigs that were taken from that very tree. Now you want the nest to use as firewood. It's perfect kindling wood, little twigs. So the halacha is loy nehanim. It's usher to have a no from that nest. However, if you did have a no from that nest, you will not be moil. So, which Rashi says, obviously midairaisa, it's not hektish, and therefore it's loy ma'alim. But midirabanan, they asked you to have a no from this nest that was made out of wood of a tree that belonged to hektish. However, what if it was b'roisha shel asherah? What if this nest was on a branch at the top of an asherah tree, which is aser b'no? There, the nest is mutter. But the problem is you're not allowed to climb on the tree to get it down, because then you're having enough of the asherah tree. So yat is becoming. Take a stick, throw it at it, so it should fall down, it should get knocked off, and then you could take that wood and have enough. Kasol kadaita. The havamina is kigoyin shishavra mimeno eitzim v'kinsa behem. The bird took twigs from this actual tree, either in the ratio the tree of hektish or in the sefer the tree of an asherah, and made a nest out of it. So this is literally a piece that broke off the Avodah Zarah. The Katani and the Raisa tells us yat is bekana, which means you're allowed to have a noah from the nest, which is literally made out of wood of an asherah tree, but it broke off by itself. So you have a kloraraya to Rish Lakish that it's mutter. Zakir B'Yochanan, no, not at all. Hacha b'may askinon kigoyin the icy eitzim alma v'kinsa behen. The bird built a nest in a tree, but that doesn't mean that the nest is built out of twigs from this tree. The bird could have bought twigs from any tree, just as it does in Ma'ives every year. It could easily bring from other places and build a nest. So therefore, this wood of the nest is not Isur enough. You still have to be careful when you get it off the asherah tree that you're not allowed to benefit from the asherah tree by climbing on it. But the wood itself was never wood of Avodah Zarah. Dekanami Dr. B'Yochanan, I'll prove to you that this is shot in the Brisa. The Katani gabe hektish loy nehelin v'loy mayalin. It's also to have a noah from this nest if it was in the hektish. If you say that this nest is not made out of the hektish tree itself, it's from a different tree, that would explain why it's usher, but also why there's no issue d'oraisa. Midirabanan, we don't want him to have any anah from this nest, but v'loy moyalin midiraisa. There's no kedusha hektish on this nest, the haloi kedishi, because this is the twigs that the nest is made out of have no kedusha. So that psak makes perfect sense. If you're going to say this nest in this tree, we assume was made out of the twigs from this tree itself, of course there's meila, hakadishi. You could discuss whether or not if it was a Avodah Zarah, if it's bottle or not, but if it started off as a wood from the tree of hektish, Avoda remains hektish. There should be a meila midaraisa. So it must be that the wood of this nest did not come from this tree, rather it came from a different tree. Zaktik or area, you don't have a raya from there that the wood came from a different tree, because maybe the wood, the twigs that this nest is made out of are made out of wood from this tree itself. If it's made from this tree itself, so then it should be hektish deraisa. The halacha should be ma'alin. No zaktik gemara. Hacha begidulin haboin la'achem ikanas kiman. Maybe the twigs that the nest was made out of was growth that the tree grew after you became hektish. And after the tree became hektish, and there's a discussion A machloikis as to whether or not the tree grows another branch after you makdish this tree, is that other branch hektish as well? Because savar ein meila begidulin. It would follow the shita who holds ein meila begidulin, and therefore that nest is not aser midaraisa, only midarabon. Zok Rashi, the begidulin haboyin beilon acher shehukta shaskina, v'hula hikta shelo. The person was makdish only the tree, not future growth of the tree. The chasover high tana, our tana could hold ein meila begidulin. Begidulin, any wood that grew off this tree after you were makdish it, does not have a kedusha. Yet umidirabanan dasiri, the rabbanan still answered it, and that's why it says ein nehenin, but ein moyalin. However, by neshera, it's the opposite. By the Ashera, we could say it's speaking with a nest that's actually built off the Ashera. Because Tony Yat is Kirish Lakish, because Rish Lakish holds that even though it's part of the Ashera tree, once it's broken off, it's going to be mutter. Probably, yeah. If they grew in the spring. Yeah. Rabavo Amar Yochanan says differently. He answers it differently. He says, my yatis. So the question originally was, you have a right to Ishlokish, that this nest is mutter, even though this nest is made out of wood of the Asherah. According to Rabbi Yochanan, it should be Aser. So Gemara, no. My yatis, we're not talking about using the nest. The wood of the nest, Avoda is Aser, like Rabbi Yochanan holds. But the yatis berfreichen, you don't want the nest. You want the birds that are in the nest. You could throw something at the nest and knock down the afreichim, and therefore you can keep the afreichim. So let's stop a second. So that's why it's mutter from the Asherah tree. But why is it usher? Why is it usher by the afreichim? Why is it usher by the afreichim? Zokt Rashi. That's only how you could learn pshat on the Sefer. So let's look at Rashi time. He's going to find for Rabbi Yochanan with a different teretz, and he's going to say, I'm not going to learn pshat that the wood is from a different tree. Everything is from this tree, and according to Rabbi Yochanan, the nest remains also. You won't not learn from this brisa that the wood broken off of the Asherah tree remains aser. It would become mutter. In fact, it remains aser. So what are we taking from the tree? What is the discussion about taking from this tree, from this nest? The other Ketaniyat is Bekana Afreichem Koiloy item. No one's being matter the eitzim of the nest. The question is merely how to get the Afreichem out, which are surely not Avodah Zara. V'yitzuk lashminon the legazrinin atozas kana shema yalo derechilon. And the whole chiddush is that we're not geyser. Don't even throw something at the nest to get the freichim out, because if you throw something at the nest, you might actually climb the tree. So that the Brash is telling us you don't make that gezerah. V'reisha be'etzim, but the reisha of the brisa that's referring to hektish, that it says ein nehenin v'loy mayalin, that's speaking about the actual wood. The kasavar ein meila begedulin. So now, when you read this brisa, that seems to be talking about one case. In fact, it's speaking about two different cases. So Kanchi B'Roshil Shal Hektish, Lein is talking about the wood of the actual nest, and B'Roshil Shal Asherah is speaking not about the actual nest, but the question is on the Afreichim, Yat is Bekana. Nugalia Hektish, it teaches us that Hektish, the Osamid Rabbanan, even though it's Gidulim, and it's not Hektish anymore, but it's still Osamid Rabbanan, the Choshkein La Asherah. Surely, if it was in the Asherah tree, it would be usher to Midarai Sanami Asira Tesefes Yosy. Okay, Gabaltik. So Amr Rabbi Yaakov Rabbi Yirmiyah Batachlifa Asber Allah. Let me give you a good explanation how Rabbi Yochanan would understand the Mishnah. Befroichen kan v'kan mutarin. By a froichen, it doesn't make a difference. It doesn't make a difference if it's regardless. It's usher. I'm sorry? Right. It will always be mutter because the freichim are no longer connected to the tree. They're independent. They're birds. Beitim kan v'kan asur. Beitzim will be usher no matter what, bein behektish, bein ba'ashera, because they're sort of connected to the tree. So Amar Ravashi, v'afreichem shetrichim le'iman kebeitzim dami. If the birds can't fly by themselves, they're not yet independent, they're very much considered connected to the nest, and then they would be usher. Rashi says, why would they be usher? They're not part of the tree. They're not a growth out of the tree. V'gazu b'rabanan kal ilan atzmon. They're geyser just like they're geyser on the gedulei hektish. They'll be geyser on the freichim because they're still somewhat considered connected to the tree. But once they're in a freiach, surely they're completely different, they're completely separate, and they only mutter. Sai by a nashera tree and sai by hektish. Dr. Heilige Mishnah weiter. Hamoitzi kelim. What if you found a cup, a saucer? You found a pot. The alayam tzuras chama, tzuras levana, tzuras darkon. You saw on this keli that you found a form of a chama, a levana, or a darkon. So the question is this an avodah zara? So the halach is you have to be choshish that it is avodah zara, and yolichem liyam hamelach. You have to throw these away where they will not be damaged. Okay? Rashi speaks out that what did you see on this keli? A mazel chama, chen levana, a picture of a chama or levana. Now, Rabbanani the army that kol shart shlamim mutarin, it would be working with the Rabbanan. According to Meir, everything is usher, no matter what you found. According to Rabbanan, it's mutter. Question is why these would be usher. Zok to Gemara, Rab Shimon Gamliel Leimer, she'al mechubadim asurin. If it was on a nice keli, Rash al keli mechubadim, she'ateshvishin lekovid, there you would say it's for the avodah zara. But shal mevuzim mutarin. If you have a beautiful picture on an ugly keli, and we'll see what that means, it would be mutar. Zok to Gemara, remember, are you telling me the lahani hu the palchi only to these types of pictures they would be that could be avodah zara, but but to no other form would we consider it an avodah zara? Urmini hashoichet l'shum yamim, l'shum naharais, l'shum midbar, l'shum chama, l'shum levana, l'shum koichavim u'mazalois, l'shum michayel sar gadol, even l'shum shilshul cotton, a little tiny little minnow. So you see, people are over. People pick any weird wacko thing to be in the avodah zara. So if people pick any wacky old thing to be over the avodah zara, so why do we say that the chash of this keli being avodah zara is limited to a select few type of tzurais? A guy will worship anything. So why does the Mishnah limit it only to certain tzurais? Amar Abaya. Miflach l'chol de mishkachi. That's true. That's true. A goy can sometimes, and if we know that he's shechting l'shem these things, clearly he's expressing that he's servicing. So a goy can make anything into an avodah zara. Amar Abaya miflach l'chol de mishkachi palchi, but meitzeru miflachi that he should create an avodah zara. Draw this picture to create the avodah zara. If he's going to create if there's an avodah zara, if he says beferish, I'm shechting l'shem anything, yeah, that could be his avodah zara. But if he's going to build an avodah zara for himself, it's only going to be in these forms. Meitzer miflachi hani tlosa dechashivi tzayir lahu upalchi. It's these pictures listed in the Mishnah. He would draw on his kalim, and he would serve them as an avodah zara. Lemidi achrini linoi ba'alma avdi. If he just put any other form, we can say by default he's not doing it to serve, he's just doing it to decorate his keli. But if he says befresh I'm shechting for some wacko item, there he's clearly showing that that's his avodah zara. But the default is a guy wouldn't service those things for avodah zara. Zok my minket Reb Sheshes chumer masniyasa. Reb Sheshes used to like finding mishnayos that were difficult to understand, and then he would explain them. Rashi's Malaket Mishnayis Hachamurais Litartzon. He would gather together Mishnayis that were difficult to understand, and he would explain them. So this is what, and then he would say these Mishnayis over in the Besmerish, people would discuss them that the taka difficult, and then he would explain them to the audience. So what did he say? Vitani learned as follows: Kol mazolos mutarin. All of the mazolos are mutter. Now it doesn't say what do they mean they're mutter. If they're made, they're asher b'ana or mutter b'ana, or is the question, are you allowed to make them? We're not sure what it's talking about yet. But kol mazolos mutarin chutz mi masol chama ulevana. Now v'chol ha'partzuvin mutarin, faces, any type of face you're allowed to make. Chutz mi parts of adam. V'chol ha'tzuros mutaris, and any type of form is allowed. Chutz mi tzuros darkon, except for the dragon. So that's what the Brisa says. Amar Mar, kol ha'mazolos mutarin. The first case of the Brisa. Chutz mi masol chama levan. So what do you see from here? You see from here that a person will make anything. A person could make anything that wouldn't be in Avodah Zara. Only in Mazel, Chama, and Levana would be Asr Bana. So let's understand this. B'may asking, what exactly are we saying mutter or Asr? Ilema ba'isa. If the question is, are you allowed to make all these mazalos? Surely you're not allowed to. Iba isa hola mazalos mishari. Are you telling me only making the Chama and Levana is prohibited, but any other star, planet you're allowed to make? V'yaksiv. It says in the pasuk, Leisasaniti, and we learn Leisasin kidmus shimshi hameshamshin lefanei b'marin. Because Baruch was telling us, don't make the form of any type of celestial being that services me up in Shemayim. And therefore, it would be also to make anything, not just the Chama and Levana. So if our Mishnah, of our Brisa that we're quoting, says Kol HaMazalos Mutarin, except for Chama and Levana, it can't be spoken about making it because you're not allowed to make anything. Ela Pshita B'Moitze. It must be where you found the Demus Chama, you found the Demus Levana, that would be also Bana. But if you found the Demus of any other planet, it would be Mutter. Ucheditnan, like we learned in the Mishnah, Hamoitzi Caleb, Valeim Tzuras Chama, Tzuras Levana, Tzuras Darkoin, our very Mishnah, Yelichem Yi Liyam HaMelech. So you see that finding it, where do you make an assumption that the guy made it for Avodah Zara? That it was a Tzuras Chama, Tzuras Levana, Tzuras Darkoin. But otherwise, if you found it, you could assume it's not Avodah Zara, and that's what the first part of the Brisa is talking about. Kol HaMazalos Mutarin, if you found it made by a guy, you can assume it wasn't for Avodah Zara unless it was a Mazel Chama Levana, which is consistent with our Mishnah. Let's go to the next case of the Brisa. Even if we're talking about you found such a thing on the floor, let's look at the middle case of this Brisa. It says in the Brisa that we learned a moment ago, Kol HaPartzuvos Mutarin chutz mi parts of Adam. Frank the Gemara, even Moitza, if you found a getchke that had a parts of on it, parts of Adam, would it be usher to keep a keli that has the parts of an Adam on it? But none we learned. Hamoitzi kelim, our Mishnah again. Valeim tzuras chama tzuras levana tzuras darkoin is yolichem liyam melech. And you see that the Mishnah limits a concern of avodah zara only if it's a tzuras darkoin. Tzuras darkoin in parts of Adam loy. So the second case of the Brisa that says kol ha'partzuvim mutarin chutz parts of Adam cannot be speaking if you found, because if you found the parts of Adam, it would be mutter to keep. Elo pshita ba'isa. So the second case of the Brisa has to be discussing whether or not you're allowed to create, whether you're allowed to make the form of a person. And it would go according to Rav Huna Barei Rabbi Shua, who the Gemara will shortly quote. Rashi says that loisason oisi kedmusi, that the pasuk loisason iti means don't make the demusa adam. Zok the Gemara iba oisa. If you're saying that the Brisa is discussing oisa, well, let's go to the third case of this Brisa. Ema seifa kol atzuras mutaris chutz mitzuras darkoin. Every tzura is mutter to make except that of a dragon. Viva oisa tzuras darkoin mi aser. Would it be aser to make the tzura of a darkoin? V'aksiv loisason iti elokei kesef hezov. And we learn from here, haniyin, only those, but tzuras darkoin, which means shemashim shebemorim. You're not allowed to make planets and the sun and the moon, but tzuras darkoin loy. That would be mutter to make. Elapshita, the third case of the brisa that says you cannot make a tzuras darkoin. Elapshita b'moitze, it must be you found it, and if you found the tzura darkoin, there you assume the guy made it for avodah zara. Will be mutter, right? It's referring to the rest of the Mishnah where it says tzuras chama, tzuras levana, tzuras darkoin, they're also. So, so the way you're learning the brisa is very weird now. Reisha v'seifa is b'moitze. The first and the last case of the brisa, we said you have to be speaking about where you found something with these tzuras on it. But the center case, where we're talking about the tzuras adam, the parts of is ba'isa, speaking about making it. That's very weird. That the first and the third case of the brisa will be discussing finding something, and the middle case of the brisa will be talking about making something. Rabbi, no, that's the way it is. In Reisha v'Seifa b'Moitza Mutziyasa ba'Isa. That's how it is. That's how you learn Pshat in the brisa. But Rava wants to say Kula b'Moitza. The entire brisa is speaking where you found. So the Reisha, the Seifa is fine. The problem is the Mitziyasa. So let's go back to the Mitziyasa and see what the problem with it was. That was the case of Partzufin. It says in the Mitziyasa, Kala Partzufin mutarin chutz mi parts of Adam. But the problem is, if you find the parts of Adam, it's going to be mutter, because the Mishnah only says if you find Chama Levana or Darkon is it also. But if you found the Keli with the parts of Adam, it's mutter. So why does the Brisa say that parts of Adam is aser? Zokt Rava Umutziyasa Rabbi Yehudi, because it's going according to Rabbi Yehuda. The Tanya we learned Rabbi Yehuda Moisef Af Demus Menika. You know what type of Adam we're talking about? If there's a picture of a mother nursing a baby, that's when it's usher, because that is avodah zara. And the sar apis, and the sar apis, which Rashi says is someone giving someone who was promoted to a sar. He was promoted to a sar, and he will soon see he helps feed people, so he takes on like a godly form. Menicha al shem chava shemenika kala olam kulay. A menika would symbolize Chava, who was meaning the whole world, meaning she's sustaining the world. That surah could be looked upon as a god. And Terafis al Shem Yosef. It's referring to Yosef, who was also promoted to a sar. Shesar umapis as kol olam kuloi. He was also mefarnes the whole world. So that's also like an avodah zara. Now, who denoted Geryuya Vikachayil, that the form of Yosef, the form of a sar, would be looked as a avodah zara. That's only if he's holding a basket and he's giving out food. So it has to be like a scene that's depicted in this tzura. That could be a tzura of avodah zara. He did nokta ben the kamanika, and the kamanika is not just a person; it has to be a person nursing. So it's depicting that scenario as someone nourishing the world, and that could be in the avodah zara, and that will be usher even if you find it. So stama tzuras adam, if you find it, is not an issue. It's only a problem if it's a tzuras adam in one of these scenarios, which seems to indicate that it's an avodah zara. Tanu Rabbanan, ezo tzuras darkoi. What is the tzura of a dragon? Pirush Reb Shimon Elazar. Kol sheyesh le. Now we're going to know what a dragon looks like. Kol sheyesh le tzitzin bein prokov. Between its joints, it has something called tzitzin. Rashi's snapper, it's like scales or hair. It has things sticking out of it by its joints. Fins. Okay. Machvi Rab Asi ben Parki Tzavar. And he said, not just out of any joint, if you have these fins coming out of its neck. Most dragons have these things coming out of its neck, right? That's what a dragon is. Amar Rab Chama Rab Chanina, Halacha Rab Shimon ben Elazar, it's a kula, because only if it has stuff coming out of its neck is it going to be avodah zara. If not, it's not considered a darkoin, and it won't be avodah zara. Amar Rabba bar Chana, Amar Rabbi Shua ben Levi. Pamachas Yosy Mahalach Acher Rabbi Elazar Kfar Beribi. B'derech, I was following Rabbi Elazar Kfar, and he was in the city of Rivi. He was on the road. I was walking behind him. Umotza Sham Tabas, and he found a ring on the floor. The Allah Tzuras Darkon, and on the ring there was the Tzura of a Darkon. Umotza Ovid Gechavim Cotton, and Rabbi Elazar Kapar saw a little guy on the street over there, and he He took advantage of the guy to help him be mevatel of Zara. When he saw him lying your guy, well, he ignored the child. But then he ran into an adult guy, and told the guy, Butla, be mevatel this avodah zarah. I don't want to pick it up. First, be mevatel just against the avodah zarah, so it'll be mutter. Then I can take it. The guy said, "No, I will not do it." So he gave him a rap across the face, and he forced the guy ubatla, and then the guy was a mevatel for him, and then he took it. So from that story, from this little incident that I observed, Rabbi Shubin Levi, Shmamina Klas. I learned three important tidbits of information. Shmamina, I learned that Ovid Kachavim Mevatel Avodas Kachavim Shaloi Vishel Chavevri. Even a guy can be Mevatel any Avodah Zarah. So this guy walking down the street was able to be Mevatel the Avodah Zarah of that ring, even though he had nothing to do with it. Because you see, Rabbi Lezer Kappa relied on that guy to do it. Ushmamina. Someone who's an adult who understands what an avodah zarah is could be mevatel an avodah zarah. A child who doesn't even understand these things, he can't be mevatel, and that's why Rabbi Eliezer Kapper didn't ask the child to. He waited for the adult. This guy didn't want to be mevatel. He was forced to because Rabbi Eliezer was beating him up. Is that called a bittul? That is the third thing that I learned, that clearly Rabbi Eliezer ben Kapper considers it a bittul. Megadav by Rabbi Chanina. Rabbi Chanina did not like what Rabbi Eliezer Kapper did at all. And he said, V'lesle Rabbi Eliezer Kapper beribi hadatnan. Does Rabbi Eliezer Kapper disagree with a Mishnah? It says in the Mishnah, Hamatzil min ha'ari, umin adoiv, umin anomer, umin agayis, umin anor, umizuda shal yom, umishliluza shal nor. If you save an avodah zarah from one of these places where it would surely not have survived, or if you find it in a place where surely he had no chance of ever getting it back, the halach is it belongs to you because the bailim are misyayish from it. Zogt Rashi, b'chivin deyayish, oivit kachavim, batla midaite, the loyla mivlacha, l'sula tzarech l'metula. Why in the world did Rabbi Eliezer Kapper see a need to get a guy to be mevatel? The fact that it was lost, the guy was miyayish already. So once he's miyayish from his getchka, he's not serving it anymore. So there's a bittul there minay obey. Why did Rabbi Eliezer Kapper see the need to make an official bittul when there's an implied bittul? Because the bailim are miyayish, they'll never get it back anyway. Omer Abaye, nehidimi no miyayish, just because the guy's miyayish from ever getting it back, that doesn't mean the guy doesn't think it's avodah zarah anymore. Meisur mi miyayish, the guy doesn't think that it's avodah zarah. Fakert, meimer Omar, if a guy finds it, surely miflach polachla. He will service this. So the gesture should remain with its kedusha. I lost this God, but somebody else will benefit from this God. And even if Yisrael mashkachlei, and even if a Yid finds it, I need to domei yikarin. This is not a cheap getchke. This is a valuable ring. It's a valuable getchke. Surely the Yid will then sell it to a goy, and the goy will serve it. So therefore, it retains its kedushas. I'm using kedusha very liberally. It retains its status of an avodah zarah. Okay, we'll stop here. I'm trying to push ahead because we have to do Sunday's but we'll stop here. We'll be mamshich tomorrow. Go ahead.